This program contains dramatic reenactments and material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised.
When a plane spirals out of control in a freak storm, three friends must jump to save their lives.
Once that door was open, I just jumped.
Without knowing the fate of his friends, Will Slattery faces a terrifying ordeal. He battles strong currents, the threat of deadly sharks, and losing his mind.
Death was imminent and very, very close.
Will Slattery and his two friends, Jimmy Simplicio and Manny Sanchez, are on a dream vacation, skydiving in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica is a great place to jump. The sky down there was absolutely gorgeous. It was blue, clear, beautiful. We were all jumping in shorts. It was just amazing, you know, really comfortable skydiving. Just a really good vibe down there. A perfect time away in this exotic tropical location.
Will and his buddies have traveled to Costa Rica from California, where they're all members of the same skydiving club.
It's a clear blue skies.
And clear blue skies.
The next day, Will prepares for his final day's jumping, and as always, safety is the #1 concern.
You check your gear over and over again. I'm probably more anal, so to speak, about that than a lot of other people, but I tend to check my gear several times to make sure that everything's in order. I'm an adventurous person, but I'm in no way a cowboy. I'm not going to do something that's going to kill me. People will tell you I'm quite conservative. If you pay attention to what your gear is doing and where things are supposed to be and keep them where they're supposed to be, it can be a very, very safe sport.
Hey, Will, you almost ready, buddy?
Yeah, man.
All right.
The guys have delayed the day's jump until the afternoon. There's been a storm in the morning, but by lunchtime, the skies have cleared.
Cloud's gonna blow over.
It was sunny, you know, some white clouds, but nothing stormy. Minus the intermittent clouds, things that day looked like they would be just the same as the day before.
Hey, Bradley, what's up, buddy?
So we all started getting our rigs together and getting our gear on to get ready to go skydiving.
Yeah, good to go.
Ready? Let's go, Jimmy, baby.
The plane we flew down there was a Cessna 206. It was a small airplane, smaller than probably most cars.
All right, my man.
Planes for skydiving are generally, they'll take out the seats. So it's basically an open compartment in the back, and we'll sit back to leg, you know, so kind of sit in a row so that we're packed in there nice and tight, you know.
Okay, blue skies, safe landing.
Fire up, baby. Go, go. Ready?
Yeah.
Nervous, man? You look nervous. A little bit.
The atmosphere on board is lighthearted.
I was there.
But as the plane climbs, the weather begins to close in.
Within 5 to 10 minutes after we took off, we actually entered the clouds. And from that point on, for probably 20 minutes, we were in complete whiteout, meaning all around the airplane was white. We couldn't see the land, couldn't see the ocean, couldn't see anything.
Pretty thick, huh? Freaky.
A little bit unnerving, you know.
Will and the guys hold tight, obeying the golden rule of skydiving.
Skydivers aren't supposed to fall through clouds. It's just a matter of safety because people can get disoriented. We were expecting at some point to come out above the clouds, but we just never did.
With no break in the clouds in sight, they decide to turn back. It's not worth the risk.
It's too thick.
We were a little disappointed, but we all skydive a lot, so it wasn't a big deal, you know, we'd get over it. We're used to clouds and, you know, you don't jump through clouds generally, so it was fine.
But as the plane turns and makes its way back to base, they hit serious trouble.
Within 20 seconds after we started going into minor turbulence, it just got worse and worse. Then the plane started going into massive turbulence. I was definitely not a happy camper, you know. I didn't want to be in a little tiny plane flying crazily all over the sky.
Seconds later, the plane is obviously out of control.
The plane is just going haywire. It even started to tilt. I was on the ceiling, I was on the floor, I was on the ceiling, I was on the floor. I was frightened. At that point, there wasn't much we could do except ride it out or jump out.
With the plane now plunging toward Earth, Will and his friends have no option but to take drastic emergency action.
And at that point, we all started going for the door, trying to get it up. It was the only thing we could do. It took us 4 tries to get the door open because we were being thrown about the airplane so much.
Come on!
Despite not knowing how high they are, and if they have enough time for their parachutes to open, they dive into the void.
Once that door was open, my butt was out of that airplane. I did not want to be there. I knew that. I trust my skydiving equipment. I trust my parachute, and I did not trust that airplane at that point. I just got out. 5 to 8 seconds later, my automatic parachute went off, which means I was going at a very fast velocity at about 700 feet. We were very low in very low cloud cover, and it was a shock to me. At that point, I looked around for my friends. I saw Jimmy under his canopy as well, going the other way quite a distance off, and Manny was under his canopy next to me, flying parallel to me.
Will isn't sure that his friend Manny is okay.
I kept calling out to him to try and get his attention so that we were coordinated on landing. But he never answered. And he was just kind of limp, you know. His head was hanging down, and my assumption at that point was that he got hit by the airplane coming out. It occurred to me that he might be dead.
Just seconds after jumping, Will is now hurtling toward Earth at 40 miles per hour, with absolutely no idea where he might land. The perfect skydiving holiday in Costa Rica is turning into a nightmare for Will Slattery and his friends. Their plane has hit dense clouds and turbulence, and they're forced to bail out to save themselves. Will's emergency parachute has opened, and he's heading toward Earth at 40 miles per hour.
Crashed in the water behind me. I looked back and saw the tail of the plane sticking out of the water. I was in somewhat shock at that point.
Will has hit the ocean still attached to his parachute rig, and he must act quickly to avoid drowning.
If you land in water, you want to get your chest strap off so that you can take your gear off immediately and swim under the parachute. At that point, it was really about focus and trying to do the right thing, so if there's a chance of survival, that you survive. It took me 2 or 3 minutes, and that was a pretty scary feeling because you can actually get tangled up in the lines and drown.
On surfacing, his first thoughts are for his friends. They've also dived out of the plane. One of them, Manny, looked in serious trouble.
Then I removed my shirt and my shoes because I wanted to be able to freely swim over and find Manny. I felt the need to act fast because if Manny was unconscious, then it was important to get to him and keep his head out of the water.
Manny! Jimmy! Manny!
He wasn't answering me. I didn't see his parachute. I didn't see anything.
Manny! Is there anybody there? Don't worry.
So I swam around toward where I thought he would have landed. I didn't even see a lick of him.
With his friends gone, Will has to quickly face up to his complete isolation.
Hello?
I accepted the fact that I was alone in a pair of shorts in the middle of the ocean. There was nothing. The plane went under. I saw no parachutes, no Jimmy, no Manny, no nothing, except ocean.
Stranded miles out in the Pacific Ocean, Will is overcome with complete hopelessness. And he can see no way out.
I couldn't see land. I saw no boats. I didn't think there was any way I was going to last overnight in the ocean. If I'm going to die, why couldn't I have just gone in with the plane instead of have to struggle out here until I drown? If there's a chance at life, I'll fight, you know? But if I'm going to die no matter what, why stretch it out, you know? Give me instant death.
Focus.
Will knows he has landed in shark-infested waters.
Had remembered what I'd known about sharks being able to smell blood and realizing that I was vulnerable in the middle of the ocean. If they want you, they can find you from very far off.
But he begins to replace his fear of sharks for a feeling that they may actually offer him a quick way out of his terrifying situation.
You hungry?
I didn't want it to be some long, drawn-out process. Like, who wants a long, drawn-out death?
Come on!
Which is why I decided that being eaten would be a much better option.
Come on! You hungry? Ah! Come and get it, come on!
But the sharks don't come, and Will begins to take stock of his predicament.
If I'd been off the coast of the States, there would be Coast Guard and other boats looking for me within a short period of time, but this was a third world country. So I thought, you know, don't be a spoiled American and think there's going to be a boat coming to get you. You have to survive this or not.
Let's just enjoy the view.
Alone in the ocean, with night fast approaching, Will decides to fight to survive.
I started to have to make decisions about what exactly I was going to do. I had to do something. I didn't want to expend all my energy treading water when I knew that if I just laid back, I could float. The most important thing out there was retaining calm and not panicking, because panic I knew would kill me. Staying calm, and that required a faculty that was born anew in myself that I think I've certainly never experienced before. There's something very pure about the action of trying to live and saying, whatever happens, happens, but I'm going to do my best to try.
Back at the airfield, the ground coordinator is waiting for the plane to return to base. It's been missing for 4 hours, and there's been no sight of the aircraft.
Tower, any sign of them yet? Over.
She needs to check the plane hasn't diverted to another airstrip before alerting the emergency services. Out in the ocean, Will has been struggling to stay afloat for 5 hours. His muscles are relying on emergency reserves of adrenaline. He's beginning to suffer acute exhaustion, and he's in complete darkness.
I could scarcely see my hand in front of my face. It felt like I was in a dark, dark place, a dark world that was very isolating. I don't think that I've ever felt more vulnerable.
But as he drifts alone in the dark, he suddenly gets his first ray of hope.
I saw 5 or 6 lights spaced out across the land. I had no idea how far they were. I knew they were lights and therefore human, and I was pretty convinced that was where the land was.
It's the glimmer of hope he's been waiting for, and Will now makes for the shore.
I had to go slow, calm, collected, cool. I would do maybe 20 to 30 backstrokes and then stop. It was a great thing I knew where the land was.
Just as safety seems within reach, the undercurrents begin to pull him further out, back to the ocean, and back into the night.
I was exhausted. I was just exhausted. I saw no actual possibility of me getting out of the ocean alive.
Will Slattery is alone in the Pacific Ocean after surviving a plane crash.
Get the lad!
He's tried to swim for land, but just as he thinks he's in reach of safety, powerful undercurrents drag him back out to sea. Alone in the ocean, his thoughts turn to the people he may never see again.
I thought about family, about friends, people back home, about Jimmy and Manny, certainly. I wondered how they were. Had they survived the initial landing in the ocean, getting out of the airplane, would they be able to survive the night?
Is there anybody there?
Ahora mismo. The weather's getting really bad.
Unsure, the ground coordinator now realizes something has gone badly wrong. The skydiving plane has not returned and is missing.
Sí, tenemos que buscarlos. No, listen. Escucha. The plane has not landed.
She knows the plane must have crashed, but the Costa Rican emergency services can't launch a rescue during the night. Visibility is just too poor.
No, not tomorrow. Now. We have to go now.
Out at sea, Will's been in the ocean for 9 hours. The water temperature drops to 45 degrees. Will is rapidly losing body heat and dehydrating even further from the effects of swallowing seawater.
And as soon as it got to be night, the swells were getting bigger, it was colder, and I was getting more water in my mouth, which I knew eventually over time could be responsible for taking my life.
No search has been mounted, and he's fast running out of hope.
I saw no boats. It was dark. I didn't think there was any way I was going to last overnight in the ocean. No boats, no planes. I'm dead, man. I don't think that I've ever felt more vulnerable. My life, my essence of actually the physical life anyway, was teetering on an edge.
Just when it seems that things couldn't possibly get any worse, Will comes under attack from beneath the water.
I realized that I was in a school of jellyfish, and they were stinging me all over my back.
Jellyfish tentacles contain thousands of tiny needle-like filaments that deliver small doses of venom just below the skin.
The pain was excruciating. It was all over my back, my legs, my feet, everywhere. It was extremely painful.
The jellyfish are stinging Will's skin, leaving welts and bleeding sores. And the salt water stings him relentlessly.
It was excruciatingly painful. I was crying. I mean, it hurt so badly.
Will desperately tries to escape the jellyfish.
I swam faster to swim out of the school.
But he just keeps swimming into yet another school.
I was, taken aback by the amount of times I was stung by the jellyfish. My God, how much worse can this get?
Come on.
It was excruciating.
The relentless stinging causes Will's mind to wander. What else is waiting to attack him in the water?
Sharks hunt at night, and do I splash around until a shark comes and eats me? It seemed a horror. It seemed...
And then his worst fears become real. There is something in the water, and it's coming towards him.
I saw something floating in the water. And be it shock, I don't know, but I thought, oh, it's crocodile.
As it glides toward Will, he is helpless against whatever predator might be out to get him.
I thought, oh, great, I'll get eaten and drowned at the same time.
Will Slattery is alone in the ocean after a terrifying skydiving accident that he believes probably killed his friends. Exhausted and confused, he sees something heading straight for him.
I had no idea how far out saltwater crocodiles would swim, and this was too elongated to be a turtle. So I thought, oh, it's crocodile. I laughed, because who would think a log, a tree, is in the middle of the ocean? I was amazed.
After 10 hours in the water, the floating log is a lifeline for Will. His first stroke of luck since his ordeal began.
I put my arms over it and I floated with it, and was much more thankful to have something to float on rather than just my belly. It gave me a lot of hope that I didn't have before, maybe some chance that this was going to end positively.
News of the accident reaches Will's skydiving club in California.
I know it's late.
His friends fear the worst.
Will's plane's gone missing in Costa Rica.
The first thing I did was the difficult task of contacting
relatives and loved ones of the missing. That was one of the most difficult tasks I think I've ever had to do.
Even though they are 3,000 miles away, they do all they can to help.
Your friends have crashed in a plane, it's in a foreign country. The first thing you do is to try and collect as much information on what's actually happening. I had an image of my friends being in the water and their life slipping away in the darkness. That was a very difficult thing to have to think about.
Giles knows that an air and sea rescue operation can't start until daylight.
I don't think anyone's organising a search of the coastline, so we're going to do it, okay?
So Giles and the club try to organize their own search as best they can.
Get in touch with as many boat captains as possible.
We decided that we would start calling fishing boats, calling charter boats in Costa Rica, and to ask them whether they would send their boats out to look for our friends.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
At least I got one boat out.
Will has survived 12 hours adrift in the ocean. He's clinging onto the log for his life. But prolonged exposure to salt water means his muscles are beginning to contract, and he's suffering extreme fatigue.
The log was giving me something to float on, but I was exhausted. I was just exhausted. I was certain, because of the amount of water I'd ingested, the amount of pain I was in from the jellyfish, and the fact that it had gotten much colder, that I was going to die.
"15 hours after crash landing in the ocean, Will has made it through the night.
I did fall asleep on the log. I only know because I woke up on the log. I have no idea when I actually fell asleep. I'm sure it was just through pure exhaustion.
Morning brings with it a tantalizing sight.
It was daylight and I could see the beach.
Oh my God. Oh.
And it seemed like the swells were pushing me toward land almost, and I could maybe, halfway surf the log into the shore, I knew that if I landed right at the right place, there would be a bar right there. I could pull up, I could grab a beer, I could call for a ride, There was a lot of hope at sunrise, my personal sunrise.
Will rides the ingoing tides for over an hour.
I wasn't making as much progress as I needed to.
But the tides turn, and the undercurrents begin to work against Will, dragging him back out to sea.
I didn't feel visually like I was closer to the beach.
With daylight, the Costa Rican rescue operation finally gets underway. But the currents have taken Will miles from where he crash landed in the sea. And the rescue teams are looking in the wrong place. Even if they knew where he was, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Throughout that day, boats and planes and helicopters would just pass, probably just doing their own thing and not looking for me. But it didn't make sense not to wave to it, so I waved a couple times, and then the log would roll over and I'd fall in the ocean. And that was a scene repeated over and over throughout that day. To have other human beings virtually so close, yet literally so far away, both gave me hope and was disheartening at the same time. I realized how insignificantly, physically, visually small I was in the ocean and how virtually impossible it was going to be for any of them to see me.
Hey! No, man!
In California, his skydiving friends know even if Will is alive, his chances of survival are extremely slim.
Hospitals as well.
Even in Costa Rica, the ocean is cold. The ocean is pulling energy from anybody or anything that is floating in it.
A few boats down that way.
Let me see if I can find what I can on the line and get you this one.
As time goes on, the chances of somebody surviving dramatically decrease.
It's a pretty big chunk of ocean, so our best chance is still the boats.
Since the log was the only thing floating, I wanted to keep it with me. So I would try various techniques of pushing it forward and then swimming along to it and then pushing it forward.
But despite his efforts, Will knows he's still getting no closer to shore.
Initially in the morning when I woke up, I thought by noon I would be on the beach. And later it didn't quite seem that anymore.
Clinging to the log for 13 hours, Will realizes his last remaining lifeline is fast becoming a burden. Instead of pushing him toward land, it's pulling him even further out to sea.
I thought that pulling and pushing the log along was really not increasing my progress. It was giving me something to float on, but it wasn't really getting me toward the shore.
The log that has saved his life so far could also end up killing him.
It was the only floating thing I had besides myself. I mean, I'd slept on it. That tree saved my life.
He faces an agonizing dilemma. Should he let the log go and hope he has the energy to reach shore? Or should he hang on, praying for rescue? Will Slattery's been battling to stay alive in the Pacific Ocean for 19 hours. His fight for survival reaches a critical phase. The log keeping him alive is pulling him away from the shore. He must decide whether to abandon it and risk drowning, or be swept even further out to sea.
I ultimately decided that the tree was keeping me in the same place, that I wasn't making as much progress as I could were I just swimming with my body. It was extremely difficult to let it go. I swam maybe 20, 30 yards away, and then I said, forget this, and I swam back to the tree and was very glad to have it back. To let it go was tantamount to saying goodbye to the one floating thing I had besides myself. You know, it seemed like it could be a very foolish thing to do, to let it go.
You're never gonna make it. Let it go. Let it go. Come on.
Will's hopes that the log would carry him to shore are crushed. Even though he's totally exhausted, he knows he must let it go.
The third time I let it go, I just watched it go over the swells and go away from me.
Having let the log go and with nothing to float on, Will's energy quickly runs out. He's swallowed a dangerous amount of seawater and is now suffering from extreme dehydration.
The biggest threat at that point was my lack of ability to breathe any longer. I was very short-breathed, just and I knew that I could not last very long like that.
The effect of dehydration means Will's blood pressure is rapidly increasing, and his pulse is racing, causing heart palpitations. If his body loses any more fluid, he could slip into unconsciousness and drown.
I'd taken on more and more and more seawater the whole time, which definitely exacerbated the effects of dehydration, as did the sun coming out, as did simply not having water.
Jesus.
I was thinking that within the next few minutes I was going to drown.
3,000 miles away, Will's friends are desperate to find him.
I really wanted to know any piece of information that might give us an advantage in helping our friends. We found basic maps of Costa Rica and we looked at the weather data, and there'd been a large storm in the area. So it really told us that if the plane had crashed in turbulent weather, it had crashed in the ocean.
Now, we reckon with the way the current's going, they may even be further down the coast. We've got boats coming out here, and here.
So far, none of the boat owners they've contacted have spotted Will. And after nearly 24 hours in the sea, Will's running out of time.
When the sun came out, dehydration really set in, and I started hallucinating pretty heavily. I noticed a severe deterioration in my mental state to comprehend reality versus fantasy.
Will has swallowed so much seawater, his kidneys can't flush out the excess salt. His body is gradually shutting down, causing hallucinations.
I would think I saw a shark fin over here, and I would look over there and, and think I saw something else over there, and I knew that there were turtles there that can just slice you open and eat you, So those things were seeping in.
Will's ordeal has driven him to the edge of insanity, and his body is ready to give up the fight.
I just felt at that point that I had very little physical and mental energy to keep my head above the water. I had been in excruciating pain from the jellyfish. The swells had picked up. There was more and more water getting inside me. And I just felt at that point like the end was imminent, like it would be a very few minutes off.
Will Slattery has spent 24 hours fighting to survive alone in the sea. He's severely dehydrated and on the point of losing his battle to stay alive.
They say that your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die. And very similar to the night before, I thought that death was imminent and very, very close. I felt that I'd left the other people in my life behind, that part of my existence was over, and that within a very few minutes I would be dead. I went vertical and I thought I saw a boat, but I was by no way sure. My mind was not together any longer. I was hallucinating heavily at that point. Either a boat was there or there wasn't.
Focus well. Focus well. Focus. Breathe. Hello?
I waved to them and yelled in Spanish as loud as I could. For them to have seen me was unlikely, so I laid back down in the water to await either drowning or rescue.
Having used his last ounce of energy, Will sinks back into the water and awaits his fate.
I looked up and saw them, and I couldn't believe it at first.
Will has drifted miles from the search area, and by complete chance, he is spotted by passing fishermen. His rescue has come just in time.
They said, "Come on, get on the boat." And I said, "I can't." I had no strength, And they all reached down, and it was just, I think, as much in shock as I was when the plane crashed.
Oh my God. Come on, what?
I just couldn't believe it, you know. I crashed in the middle of the ocean, and my fat, pasty butt made it through 24 hours in the ocean.
No.
When I found out Will was alive, that brought a lot of joy. He didn't just survive the crash, he survived the crash and he survived the bloody ocean.
Over the next few days, the bodies and plane wreckage are pulled from the ocean. Will's friends, Manny Sanchez and Jimmy Simplicio, along with the pilot and remaining passengers, all perished in the crash. Will is confirmed as the only survivor.
Manny was this amazing, almost cartoonish, almost childlike, beautiful human being. And Jimmy really is the same, an enigmatic, amazing character, you know? Kind of a hard ass, but a really beautiful soul at the same time. Did we do the right thing by jumping out? You know, I mean, I did the right thing. Manny and Jimmy did the same thing as I did. We all made the same decision, so I'm comfortable with the decision we made.
After his 24-hour ordeal, Will spent 5 days recovering in the hospital. He's still skydiving.
I love skydiving. I've done probably 2,000 jumps since the accident. The airplane was the dangerous thing there. My parachute saved my life.